As Black people who have been hurt continuously by the city and country it loves, it ain't our responsibility to take care of everybody else.
As we know, African Americans in Chicago have been pretty much upset about what's going on with the migrant crisis. We've been covering those things. Brandon Johnson has been an extreme disappointment, and a lot of people are left with uncertain feelings about the situation. And then we get into the spending of the budget. Now, the spending of the budget got to $300 billion. Now it's even more than that. But NBC Chicago was trying to find records of how this money was being distributed in the city of Chicago.
NBC5 Investigates is taking the city of Chicago to court to obtain records related to the migrant crisis.
For months, our team has reported on problems inside migrant shelters here in the city and has exposed how millions in taxpayer dollars were being spent. And tonight, we're trying to understand why certain city records were withheld. Investigative reporter Bennett Haberly joining us now with more. Bennett.
Yeah, Allison, Stephan, public records are vital to our reporting and to the public's right to know. In our quest to understand how the city responded to the migrant crisis, we combed over thousands of pages of reports, and in doing so, realized we may be missing some more. And now we're suing to obtain what should be public information. At its height, Chicago's migrant crisis involved housing as many as 15,000 people, and in some cases meant having them live in crowded buildings. This once vacant warehouse was converted into the city's largest shelter in Pilsen, which at one time housed 2,500 people. Last month, NBC5 Investigates first reported how the city's own records helped identify potential gaps in the city's response to migrants' health needs. These records noted as far back as October, the city was aware that overcrowding individuals at the shelters put both new arrivals and shelter staff at higher risk of contagious illnesses, and that the lack of space within the shelter system created increased challenges to place people and provide them with initial health care.
So they ended up suing Brandon Johnson, right, and his administration. Now we are finding out more details about a lot of the funding that was supposed to be spent in Chicago with the migrant crisis, and we are finding out that their funds were not being reported in the spending report. And this looks very bad on Brandon Johnson's administration.
Now to NBC5 Investigates, which for months has followed the money trail tied to Chicago's migrant mission. Total spending now tops more than $400 million.
Now, despite the creation of a city spending website, it's still not exactly clear where all of that money has gone. In this follow-up report, investigative reporter Bennett Haberly uncovers some new information not shared by the city.
Consider these numbers. More than 6,000 people still live in city-run migrant shelters. That means costs are still adding up. Since August of 2022, the city of Chicago has spent more than $400 million, according to the city's spending website. Nearly $253 million went to one private company, Kansas-based Favored Healthcare Staffing, which staffs the shelters. Another $76 million went to Equitable Social Solutions. That company partnered with another called ReloShare, which helped identify and sign lease agreements with property owners of the buildings that eventually became the migrant shelters.
That's where a number of those leases are.
But when we asked the city months ago for copies of these lease agreements, we were given just 9 out of 27. The use of these private companies has helped mask from public view where the public dollars have flowed. What we didn't know until now is how much the property owners of the migrant shelters were earning. But thanks to a new lawsuit, we're being provided some more clarity. A lending company filed this lawsuit last month against 2 Chicago developers, alleging they did not make it clear when they signed a loan agreement that the building in the West Loop would be used to house migrants. What is not in dispute is that the owners of the Ogden shelter are paid $150,000 a month by ReloShare as part of a use agreement. That means in a year's time, they'd receive more than $1.8 million. The lease agreement also calls for additional payments of up to $400,000 if the number of migrants inside the Ogden shelter exceeds 650. The latest figures show more than 700 people still live here.
If there are public dollars involved, shouldn't the public know where they flow?
100%.
Back in March, Alderman Andre Vasquez, the chair of the City Council's Migrant Committee, told us aldermen themselves have had a hard time accounting for all the spending.
That's still the question that's out.
When we attempted to ask Mayor Brandon Johnson about this at the time, he said this.
Again, we're meeting you right where you are.
Were it not for this new lawsuit, the public would have no idea how much these property owners are earning.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
We pressed the mayor about this last week and asked if he would consider adding the information to the city's website. He said this.
We have given an accurate account of how dollars have been spent.
That's it? Is there anything that would preclude your administration from sharing that level of detail?
There's no information that has been kept from you.
Johnson then reiterated talking points he's made before, how he's renegotiated contracts to save taxpayer money, and how Congress has failed to provide additional financial relief. He also doubled down, incorrectly stating that all spending information is available.
That information is available to you, sir.
Not all of it, though, is, sir. I mean, that's
Can you
the point.
give me a specific example of what's not available?
The Ogden shelter in the West Loop, that's what is spelled out in this lawsuit, that they get $150,000 just for being the property owner per month. Nowhere is that available on the city's spending website. My question, again, is simply, is there anything that would preclude you from including that level of detail? You guys have said you're transparent. Why not show it?
All of the information related to the spending to this mission is available.
But let's go back to some of the African American concerns. People who live in the city, people who were born in the city, they've been having concerns such as this.
We don't want to have to recall anybody. We don't want to have to protest anybody, but we are not going to be ignored, Brandon. Mayor Johnson.
Many in Chicago's black community and the city council speaking out against spending $51 million to house migrants, asking when will the help for them finally become a reality.
And it cannot be put on the backs of the residents of Chicago without showing them that they're getting something out of this.
This has been going on for a long time. And this is Brandon Johnson in his first year as mayor. So the question is this: how do you even qualify this guy in the future when you don't even know what's being spent? Now, let's kind of talk about this in terms of what's happening right now in Kenya. Kenya has a lot of marches and protests against their finance bill. They want to reject it. And one of the reasons why Kenya is in so much debt to the Chinese and to the United States is because people feel that at least a third of the budget is being corrupted by politicians and people in government, right? So that's money that's missing from the budget that could be going to do something else, but it's not being applied correctly. In the same case with Chicago, my question is this: could some of those funds be allocated for the city of Chicago in some aspect, education, or could that money be allocated toward the African American community? Since, hey, we don't really know what y'all spending on anyway, and you don't want to disclose it. Why do you have to hide everything? And then once you're hit with these facts, you get defensive. Again, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. And we continue to learn this all the time in politics. What we are drawn to as the African American community is obviously somebody who talks against, the regime of elitism, white supremacy, and injustice. What you don't understand is just because you have people saying that things are an injustice for you, it doesn't mean that they're going to create justice for you. And you keep seeing that. You start hearing things like the Black and Brown Coalition and all of that. It's a good indicator that there is no justice coming for you. Even in Dalton has a 90% black population. There really isn't a brown population there. You see what the mayor Tiffany Hayner is doing, and you see what level of corruption that she's doing in that particular town. Not only that, but the whole village. These politicians are there to serve their masters and serve themselves. And so if you don't look at what's happening, you're voting in somebody to mistreat you. Imagine getting into a relationship with a man or a woman and you're only in there to give your love to them while they turn around and whoop your ass and steal from you and hurt you. But you're still in that committed relationship over 30, 40, 50 years. Is that any way to live your life? But you're complaining about it. You're talking about what she won't do or what he won't do, but you're continuing to be abused. That's blacks and the Democrats. And they're going to continue to do that even if they give us a black face. That's their job. Their job is to continue to put other groups over us, because there is no way you can go to Chile or Venezuela and somebody will house you and they will give you those benefits that migrants are getting here. And no leader could ever stand to be re-elected even talking like that. He might not even live to see the next day. So guys, it's your boy O'Shea Duke Jackson, back at it again with another episode of Fair Use. We're out.